On February 18th, 2 months before my 51st birthday, the unthinkable happened. I had a heart attack. I was standing on my pool deck drinking Corona and waiting for the coals in my smokehouse to ignite. At first, I thought my last sip of beer had gone the wrong way, but as it got worse, I realized something was terribly wrong. The pain was excruciating and rapidly intensifying. It felt like someone was standing on my chest. I could feel and even hear my heart beating uncontrollably. I fell to my knees and then onto my back, gasping for breath. Thank God for cell phones because it was the only thing that saved my life. I reached into my shorts, pulled it out, and dialed 911. I don't remember if I said help or anything else. I just remember that after a couple minutes, there was a loud crack, and a bunch of people started doing something to me. I must have passed out because the next thing I knew, I was in the hospital, being told I was being prepped for surgery. "Mr. Moore, can you hear me?" a voice asked. "We need to do a heart bypass on you right away, do you understand?" I nodded that I understood. A clipboard was shoved under my arm and I signed my name on some kind of authorization. Or maybe it was an order for Girl Scout cookies. I have no idea, nor did I care. I just wanted the pain to stop. "Is there someone we should contact?" the nurse asked. "With my wife." "My wife? Is she here?" I asked. "No, when the paramedics arrived, it was just you in the house. I'll have someone check as soon as possible," she told me. "In the meantime, try to relax. We're on our way to the operating room now, and you'll be fine." By this point, I seemed to have a vague understanding of what was going on, but nothing cleared up in my brain as I was wheeled into the elevator and then into a large, bright room. "Breathe deeply, and when you wake up, it will all be over," the doctor told me. My life did not flash before my eyes. I didn't have any out-of-body experiences, and thank God I didn't see a bright light at the end of the tunnel. I just woke up in the recovery room, and a middle-aged nurse was standing over me taking my pulse. "How are you feeling?" I tried to say something, but my mouth was too dry. Although my mind was working, my body wasn't doing what I wanted it to do. "Don't worry, you'll feel much better in a couple hours. Just get some sleep." She was right. The next time I woke up, I felt both better and worse at the same time. Sitting next to my bed was my wife of 28 years, Sandy. "Are you okay?" When I got home, the neighbors told me what had happened. "The doctor said you're going to be fine," she said, smiling. My mouth was still very dry, so when I started to say something, I barely managed to utter it. "Leave me alone," I started, but it came out quieter than a whisper. "What are you trying to say?" Sandy said, moving closer to my mouth. "Get out of my sight and leave me the hell alone," I said loud enough for her to hear. "Honey, don't try to talk, just lie down and rest. I'll be right beside you," she said as she touched my cheek. At that moment, my pulse quickened, my face flushed, and a nurse came running into the room to see what was going on. "Leave me the hell alone," I shouted at her. "Miss, you're going to have to leave. You're upsetting the patient and raising his vitals. Please leave, miss," she told Sandy. "But I'm his wife," she replied, stammering. "Either way, you're upsetting him and I need you to leave right now." "Honey, I'll be in the hallway if you need me," she said, looking back at me as she was led out of the room. I gestured to the nurse and she stepped closer. "No visitors, please," I told her. "And discuss my condition only with me, no one else." "I understand, Mr. Moore. I'll hang a no visitors allowed sign on your door and make sure the doctor discusses your condition only with you. Do you need anything else?" she asked. I nodded. "In that case, try to relax and get some sleep. The doctor will come later to examine you. You don't get much rest in a hospital. If they're not cutting you, they're drawing blood or trying to inject some damn pill in the middle of the night." "Sleep? Yeah, sure, lady," I thought to myself. And then the doctor came in and said everything was going according to plan. They did a triple bypass, and when they went into the operating room, they saw evidence of other damage, as they like to call it, from the previous attack. I told him that it probably happened about 3 months ago, but I thought it was just a stress attack. "You're very lucky, Mr. Moore. If you didn't have a cell phone, you might not have survived," he explained. "You really need to get your weight and blood pressure under control, or you'll be seeing me again," he said, looking at my chart. "I want you out of bed tomorrow morning. I want you to start walking for at least 10 minutes every hour, and then we'll see how it goes." "How long am I going to lay down, Doc?" "If you're asking when you can go back to work, the answer is no sooner than 2 months. When you get home, you'll need to be around someone at all times, at least for the first couple weeks. After that, we'll proceed as circumstances dictate, depending on how you feel. Doc, I won't be rehabbing at home, so can you recommend a good center? There's a pretty good center about 3 miles from here with a great gym and a nutritionist on staff, he told me. All you have to do is call our office and make an appointment. I want to warn you that it's quite expensive, but it has a great reputation. By the way, you had a lot of visitors and some of them were furious when they were informed that you had asked them not to come and call, he said with a puzzled smile. You probably had your reasons, but I'd hate to be in your shoes when you get home, he said as he walked out the door. Who says I'm coming home? I thought to myself. A week later, I was sitting in a private room at the rehab center. It overlooked an open pond and was more like a hotel room than a hospital room. I was given a full medical examination and asked how long I planned to stay here. Let's count on 2 months and we'll see there, I told the coordinator. Mr. Wilson, your weight is 65 pounds over ideal, and you're not in the best physical shape. We need to enroll you in the gym and put together an exercise program. But first of all, we need to put together a proper nutrition program to get your weight back to normal. It won't be easy, but if you follow the staff's instructions, you'll see results. So I'm going to escort you to the gym so you can start exercising. Well, you have me for the next 2 months, so do what you want with me, I said with a laugh as we started the recovery program. You're probably wondering how I got myself to this state. The reasons are simple. I am too good at what I do for a living. I don't brag or talk about it to pad my ego. It's a fact. I have a certain talent for finding the best people for the job, making sure they are fully trained, and finally letting them do what I hired them to do. I realized a long time ago that I couldn't do everything myself. I tried for a while, but it almost killed me. Now I sit back and let others do the work. I give them the project, tell them what results the customer wants, and then let them do what they do best. Now life is a success. I work as a sales manager for a marketing company. I've been with the company for 26 years and became a silent partner a couple years ago. No one, and I mean no one, including my wife, knows about it. 5 years ago, I took a 25% cut in my salary to buy the company. Another 5 years would pass, and I would be a 50% owner along with my buddy Ken. Sound like I've got it all figured out? I do when it comes to business, but my personal life is a different matter. I have 2 spoiled children and a wife who aspires to a social life. My youngest, John, has a great college education and was more than upset when I didn't offer him a position in the company. I simply told him that family and business don't mix. But between you and me, I didn't want to be the one to fire his lazy ass when things didn't work out for him. He found a nice girl and got married, but he still asked me for money about every other month. I guess I never learned how to say no to him, but not anymore. Tina, who is 2 years older than John, is in vocational school. I think she has a 6-year plan. She has changed her major 3 times and I have no idea what it is now, but it doesn't matter. At the beginning of this school year, I told her she had 1 semester to finish, after which she would be on her own. She went to her mother and complained, and when Sandy turned to me, I just told her that was enough. You see where I'm going with this, don't you? I stopped being the nice guy with an open checkbook. At 25 and 27, I no longer have to support them and I'm not going to. They are now officially off the payroll. As for my wife, Sandy, that's a different story. About 3 months ago, one night I was feeling a little frisky. Our sex life had dwindled a lot over the past year and I was trying to get it back on track. And where was I? Oh yes, after dinner, I served her a glass of wine and asked if she was in the mood. For what? Well, you know. How about you and I go upstairs and have a little fun? I said with a smile. I'm a little tired today, and you know I have a party to plan, she replied. Oh, come on, honey. It's not like I'm asking for a kidney. Just a little love. I should have known this wasn't going to go the way I had planned, as Sandy looked as interested as a person sitting in the dentist's chair waiting for a root canal. We got into bed, and that's where the complaining started. Okay, just forget it, I said, getting out of bed and heading for the bathroom. Where are you going? To be alone, so I don't have to hear you whine anymore about how unpleasant it is to do this to me, I said as I slammed the door shut. Later, I headed to our spare bedroom. Where do you think you're going? She asked. Away from you before I say something I'll regret later, I replied, slamming the door shut. She was right. I had put on a lot of weight in the last couple years. I probably should have taken better care of myself, but I was lazy. I took up golf, but more to attract new clients. I didn't really enjoy it, and I really didn't play well. The only perk of joining the country club was that there was always some kind of event going on. The next morning I left before Sandy even got up. I was still furious, but by this time I had calmed down a bit. Maybe it's not all her fault, I said to myself as I sat at my desk eating a donut and washing it down with a second cup of coffee. It was about 10 o'clock when I got an email from Sandy from her work. It didn't contain any, "I'm sorry" or "I love you," only that she wasn't in the mood last night, and instead of talking to her about it, I just left in annoyance. I set the coffee aside and tried to remember the last time we made what I would call good love. Everything went to shit, and it seemed that Sandy would rather do without me than do it with me. That's when I had an epiphany. Maybe she's getting her needs met somewhere else? That's when I decided to broach the subject and see what came of it. What the hell was she going to do? Give up on me? I replied to her with the following letter. Whatever you're doing, whoever you're with, you better stop right now if you want to stay married to me. When I hit the send button, I knew I was going to get some kind of response, but I thought she would at least wait until I got home. Sandy sent a scathing email and unleashed a barrage of criticism on me. How dare I accuse her of cheating? That I was the one with the problem with our sex life, not her. And that since I was out of breath walking up 2 flights of stairs, what kind of sex life did I expect? Maybe she should buy an oxygen tank and put it next to her bed were some of the nicest comments she wrote back. Her last comment was that maybe I should move into the guest room permanently so she wouldn't be responsible for me having a heart attack. My response was short and to the point. So be it. That night I didn't go home for dinner. I ate with my partner Ken. I thought about not going home at all, but decided that would only make it worse. Sandy was waiting for me when I walked in the door. How dare you? How dare you accuse me of cheating on you, she yelled. I have never cheated on you in all the years of our marriage. Well, I figured if you weren't getting it from me anymore, you must be getting it somewhere else, I said, not backing down. If you don't mind, I'm tired. And since you're only going to yell at me, I think I'll go to bed, I told her. So I guess you won't be sleeping in our bedroom anymore, she said sarcastically. What's the point? You don't want me to sleep there anymore, and I don't go where I'm not welcome, I said as I walked up the stairs. Get some sleep yourself. See if I care, Sandy shouted as she walked up the stairs. It was then that my chest first started to ache. Every step was agonizing, but I wasn't going to stop. I barely made it to the top landing before I hit the wall or fell, one of the two. I made it to the spare room, fell onto the bed, fully clothed, and passed out. When I finally woke up and looked at the clock, I saw that it was 2:30. So I can't let her act like this, I said to myself as I headed to the bathroom. After splashing water on my face, I looked in the mirror and I didn't like what I saw. Gotta get a grip, I said to myself as I took off my clothes, which were wet with sweat. The next morning, I slept until almost 9 o'clock. The house was quiet. Sandy had already left, so I called work and told them I was taking the day off. Instead of relaxing at home, I went to a doctor's appointment. You need to lose at least 50 pounds, he told me, and your blood pressure is very high. I'll prescribe you something to lower it, but if you don't start taking better care of yourself, you're going to have serious problems, he warned me. All of this I've heard before, at least for the past 2 years. I tried going on a diet, but it wasn't something I liked, so I didn't do it. I told him I would try to lose weight and I would take my medication. He gave me a follow-up appointment in 3 months, and I left with a calorie chart and 2 diet programs to try. I threw them in the back seat of the car. The house became chilly at best. We no longer ate together and only talked to each other when absolutely necessary. At the end of the 2nd month, we started talking to each other again. There were no "I'm sorries." We only talked about superficial things or the kids. Saturday was the club's annual charity auction. "Steve, are you coming?" Sandy asked. "Yes, I'm going," I replied. "Well, we could go together. Is your tuxedo ironed?" she asked. "Cleaned, ironed, and ready to go." The trip to the club was relaxed. We didn't talk about anything important until I took the initiative. "I'm sorry," was all I said without looking at her. "Me too," Sandy replied. "I missed you and I don't want to fight anymore." That was all we had time for when I pulled up in front of the club. I handed the clerk my keys and he handed me a ticket. I walked around, opened Sandy's door and held out my hand to her. She took it, smiled, and my heart beat faster. We made our way to the dining room and found our table. The dinner wasn't bad, but the wine was much better. I ordered 4 bottles for our table, and along with 3 other couples, we toasted to our health. After dinner, the orchestra played and people started dancing. I did one slow dance with Sandy, and that was more than enough for me. She asked if I minded if she danced with a few more men. No problem, I answered her. I was walking around the room and chatting with a few friends when I noticed Sandy on the dance floor. It was a slow dance, and I didn't recognize the man she was dancing with. His arm was wrapped around her waist but slowly went south. 2 dances later, the same thing happened again as they danced outside on the moonlit patio. I followed them, staying out of sight. They were too far away for me to hear what they were saying, but their body language spoke loud and clear. When he leaned in and kissed her, I realized that was enough. Aren't you staying for the auction? The parking lot attendant asked. I don't need anything else there, I replied, got in my car and drove off. I had driven about 20 minutes when my cell phone rang. Guess who? I turned it off and put it on the seat next to me. I had been home for about 2 hours when Sandy burst into the house. What the hell is going on with you? Why did you just pick up and leave me? She yelled. I thought you wanted to be alone, I replied. What the hell are you talking about, Steve? The dark-haired man, the patio, the kiss, I've seen it all, I told her. Nothing much, she replied. Nothing. Are you saying that a man kissing my wife is nothing? Well, I couldn't agree more, Sandy. And I suppose now you've gotten into the habit of letting men grope you while you dance with them. I and everyone else saw your performance on the dance floor, I told her. Or was it just me imagining it, Sandy? It wasn't as it seemed, Steve. I probably should have asked Rick to remove his hand, but it was just innocent flirting, she told me. And the kiss was nothing more than a thank you for me dancing with him. Immediately afterward, I left to look for you. And it took you 2 hours to get home? Since you weren't answering your cell phone, I had to find someone to give me a ride home. Let me guess. Rick volunteered to drive you home. Am I right? Yeah, it was Rick, and no, nothing happened, she tried to assure me as I started to walk away. Hell, nothing happened, Steve, she repeated. How long ago was that? I asked. How long ago was it? How long ago did you give up on us? I said, walking up to my new and permanent room. Damn it, Steve, I didn't do anything, she screamed, breaking apart with sobs. I guess it was shortly after I gave up on myself, I said one last time, closing and locking the bedroom door. On Sunday, I didn't leave the bedroom. I slept and thought a lot about how my life had turned out. I had 2 shitty kids who I never heard from unless they wanted something, and a wife who I was basically cohabitating with. Sort of like a sister. I needed to get away for a few days. Our lake house was about an hour away. It had belonged to my parents, and when they passed away, I bought out my brother's share and remodeled the interior. On Monday, I packed my bags and hit the road. A quick call to work and I was on my own for the next 4 days. I just needed some alone time to deal with some things without Sandy. As soon as I opened the door, I knew something was wrong. I hadn't been here in at least 4 months, and when I left, the apartment was in perfect order. Someone had been here since then. There was an empty bottle of wine on the table, and after a quick look around, I discovered that our bed was slept in. And not just sleeping, but doing something on the bed. The white sheets still showed the ring left by the wet stain. Well, now I know where and with whom, I said to myself, pulling the mattress to the door and tossing it onto the lawn. My heart was beating at the speed of a mile, and I was sweating all over as I sat down in a chair on the porch. Steve, old buddy, looks like you've been replaced, I said to myself, starting to get angry again. To hell with all of them. I don't need them. I used to have them, and now I don't, I said to myself. For the next 4 days, I made a list of what I wanted out of life, where I wanted to go, and none of them included anyone from my family. It was a kind of bucket list that didn't need to be kicked out of the bucket. I got home late Friday night, but Sandy was nowhere to be found. Saturday afternoon, I was about to expect her to explain where she had been for the past 2 days, when all hell broke loose and I had a heart attack. Next chapter. So we've come to where I am now. I finally called Ken at the rehab center to let him know I was still alive and well. They didn't want to call me, he told me. How are you feeling? Better, but still very weak. Looks like I'm going to have to lay down for a couple months. I need Judy to take my laptop with me so I can keep in touch and get updates. Do you think that's wise? Ken replied. Don't worry, I won't go overboard, but Judy and I will keep in touch, I told him. You know your wife was here the other day. She took something from your desk. I think it was a picture of you. Are you doing well?" He asked. "Never better. Just have Judy drop off my computer, and for God's sake, please don't tell anyone where I am. I certainly don't need visitors," I told him. "By the way, I'm squeezing what I can out of our health insurance," I said with a laugh. "That's what it's there for. Just get well and let me know if you need anything, buddy." Bastards is what I called them after the second week. First, they tried to wear me out to death in the gym, and now they're trying to feed me scraps. "I've seen bigger snacks," I said to myself as I looked at my dinner plate. I was working out 4 times a day and eating 5 servings that no child could survive on, but I was losing weight. After about 5.5 weeks, I became less irritable and got into a rut. Food sucked. There was never enough of it, but I loved what was happening to me. I could walk on the treadmill for 30 minutes without oxygen. My pants were loose around the middle, and for the first time in a long time, I was starting to feel better. "Damn it, I can do this," I said to myself. Chapter 2. When the Goodwill truck pulled into the driveway, Sandy thought they were just using it for a U-turn. "Mrs. Moore?" the driver asked. "Yes, I'm Mrs. Moore. I've been ordered to pick up the car and instruct you," he said. "What kind of orders? I've never been ordered to pick up a car before." "I know that, miss. It was initiated by your husband, Steve Moore," he said, showing me his signature at the bottom of the page. "It says here to take away any articles of clothing in the house that belong to your husband. The note says they aren't boxed up yet, so if you don't mind, could you show me where what's lying around so we can get to work? We have another run this afternoon." I showed them Steve's closet and dresser in our bedroom and led one of the workers down the stairs where his winter clothes were stored. It took them a little less than an hour to pack everything up and load it into the truck. I signed the receipt and got my copy before they left. What the hell is he doing? I thought to myself. After the explosion in his room, I wasn't allowed to see or talk to Steve while he was in the hospital. The doctor wouldn't tell me how he was feeling or when he would be discharged. When Steve stopped seeing John and Tina, I became concerned. I know he was mad at me, but that was no excuse for not seeing the kids. On Tuesday, I snuck into the hospital and climbed the stairs to his floor. There was no way the nurse was going to let me through this time. I waited until she was at the other end of the hallway and then ran into Steve's room. Bursting through the door, I shouted, "Why won't you talk to me?" The stunned woman looked at me and replied, "Because I don't know you," trying to figure out what the hell this crazy woman was doing in her room. "So where did you move Steve Moore to?" I shouted to the nurse behind the front desk. "I'm very sorry about that. He's gone," she replied. My eyes glazed over. "When? How?" I asked. "What did they do with his body?" I cried. "I'm his wife, damn it. I have a right to know," I said, getting angry again through my tears. "When I said he was gone, I meant he checked out 2 days ago. And if you want any more information, you'll have to come to the office. If that's all, I have a whole floor of patients to take care of," she told me. The office told me that Steve had been discharged and sent to rehab, but did not deign to tell me where exactly. I was told it was the patient's directive. "Great, here we go again," I said to myself as I walked out the door. Sitting in the car, I planned my next steps. Steve was right. I had long since given up on the two of us. His weight had increased dramatically, and whenever I brought it up, he responded by telling me not to pick on him. He looked like a huge sack of potatoes. We did it probably once a month, and that was only after he whined about it for a day or two. I guess you could call it pity entertainment because while he enjoyed it, I never did. I was very frustrated, and that's when Rick stepped in. I first met Rick when we joined a country club. Once a month, they had a dinner and dance, and he always came alone. During the evening, he danced with all the available women. In the evening, Steve would leave to drink or feed his face, and Rick and I would dance the night away. It had been a long time since anyone had hugged me like that. Soon, we were dancing a few numbers and then sitting and talking on the patio until it was time to leave. Or until I saw Steve looking for me. A few months later, we met for lunch on a Saturday afternoon when Steve was golfing. We had a couple glasses of wine each, and everything seemed so right. We ended up in the back seat of his car and got down to business. We fixed our clothes, kissed goodbye, and I headed back to the house. I didn't even feel guilty until I was in the shower trying to force myself to relax again and thinking about Rick. What the hell was I doing? I was fooling around with some guy in the back seat of his car, and now I'm thinking about him instead of my husband. This is so not nice, I said to myself, disgusted with what I was doing. The problem was that I no longer felt attracted to my husband. For the next 2 weeks, I nagged Steve about his weight and tried to tell him how handsome he would be if he lost 40 pounds, but he never took the hint. He only got mad at me again. It all came crashing down when one night after dinner he wanted to fool around. It was a bad session, and he went to the bathroom, pissed off. I felt bad, but not that bad. He slept in the spare room that night, and when I got up the next day, he was gone. The next morning at work, I felt a dark brown touch. Everything I touched was turning to shit. I felt sorry for myself and did something stupid. I emailed Steve and basically told him it was his fault for dumping me last night. However, in response, he answered me directly. "Whoever I was cheating with, I better stop if I still want to stay married," was all it said. Hell, there was no way he could have known about that Saturday. Anyway, if he'd been minding his own business at home, this would never have happened. We didn't do it. We just fooled around a bit, that's all. Severe. I probably shouldn't have answered his emails when I was angry because I told him everything I could think of. I told him I never cheated on him, and if he wasn't such an obese slob, we'd have more fun. I realize now that I was basically pushing him away and he was probably tired of arguing. Then he replied that maybe he should live in the guest room permanently if I didn't want to see him anymore. Now things were getting out of hand. When Steve came home, we had a huge fight. We threw accusations at each other, him one way, me the other. I slept alone that night, and many, many more nights after that. The night of the charity auction, we finally apologized to each other. It tore me apart, but I think we were both too stubborn to admit we were wrong or what the real problem was. We had a wonderful dinner. Steve danced with me and then decided to socialize with his friends. I made the mistake of dancing with Rick. We danced, maybe a little too close, and on the patio he told me he wanted to take it to the next level, and then he kissed me. I told him it was a mistake and that I would never cheat on my husband, and left him there to lick his wounds. I never saw Steve leave, and neither did everyone else. The attendant in the parking lot told me he had left about a half hour before, and when I called him, the message went straight to voicemail. I was pissed and had too much to drink before I realized I needed to get home somehow. Rick came over and asked what was wrong. Steve got pissed off for some reason and left. He's not answering his cell phone and I need to find my way home. "Sandy, I'll give you a ride home after the auction," he said. I returned his gaze. "And I'll keep my hands to myself too," he assured me. I drank half of the auction before we left. On the way home, I started to get angry again. How could he just leave me there, I pondered. Apparently, Rick saw how angry I was and told me to relax. When he pulled into the parking lot by the lake, I was surprised. And when he reached up to kiss me, I didn't stop him. The only reason we didn't go all the way that night was because there was a police car driving through the parking lot. When he hit the car with his spotlight, I sobered up pretty damn fast. "Rick, take me home right now," I demanded. When I got to the house, I thanked him and ran inside. I was almost sober, but angry as hell again. When Steve accused me of cheating, I was furious. But what hurt me the most was when he asked when I stopped believing in our marriage. I broke down and started crying and telling him I never cheated on him, but he didn't believe me anymore. On Sunday, Steve wouldn't come out of his room, so I didn't insist. I assumed we would talk on Monday, and I wanted to make sure I had everything ready. When he didn't come home Monday night, I thought it was his way of punishing me. When he didn't come home on Tuesday, I called his secretary Judy and was told that he had taken a couple of days vacation. That bastard is sulking somewhere, I said to myself. Well, two can play at that game. I left Wednesday to spend a couple days with my daughter in college. We had a great time and even had a bachelorette party with a couple of her friends Friday night. Saturday morning, I woke up with a hangover and an upset stomach. "I guess I'm getting too old for parties like this," I said, as I was getting ready to leave. I said goodbye to my daughter, thanked her for a good time, and drove home. No sooner had I gotten out of the car than a neighbor ran up to me. "Steve was taken by ambulance to the hospital this morning," she told me. The front door was closed, but the lock was broken. I ran inside and saw that a few things had been rearranged, and the deck smelled like smoke. The coals were almost out, but there were 2 stoves on the grate. I took them down, put them in the refrigerator, and opened the yellow pages. There were only 2 hospitals in our neighborhood. I called Mercy General and hit the jackpot. Steve was hospitalized, but they wouldn't tell me anything over the phone. I changed my clothes and went outside. "Triple bypass," I almost shouted. "How long will he be in surgery?" I asked. About another hour, I was answered. There's nothing you can do but wait. He has a great doctor, and we caught it in time. After the surgery, he'll go to the recovery room, and from there he'll be assigned a room. If you'll wait in the lobby, I'll come get you when they're done. Can you say shithead? Because that's exactly how I felt. He could have died, I kept telling myself over and over again. When I bring him home, I'll show him how much I love him. We'll get through this together. But I wasn't given that chance. I eventually tracked him down at the rehab center, but he still refused to see me. I started to get angry. Stubbornness is one thing, but Steve took it to the extreme. Somehow he must have found out about what happened to Rick. I have no idea how, but someone must have seen us and told him. I just need a chance to explain to him that nothing really happened, but he's avoiding me like the plague. Ken and Judy weren't much help, but when I found out he had a laptop, I sent him an email, although it wasn't as big as my last one. Steve, I love and miss you, dear, and I don't understand why you won't let me see you. I know we've had some issues lately, and we've both said a lot of things in anger, but I love you and I still believe you love me. Please give me a chance to explain everything you think I did or didn't do. Steve, I need you and I want to grow old and gray with you. If you won't let me see you, at least talk to me. Also, the kids don't understand why you don't want to see them. They came to the hospital, and when the nurse wouldn't let them into your room, John got very angry. Please write them a line because they are very worried about you too, your loving wife. Chapter 3. I was sending an email to a salesman who had foolishly lost a large order when Sandy's email popped up on the screen. I finished reprimanding the salesman, telling him that if something like this happened again, he would be out of business. Then I went back to Sandy's letter. I reread it 3 times before replying to her. Dear Sandy, let's get right to the point. For over a year now, you have not been my loving wife. It's true that I've put on a lot of weight, but when you got as big as a house while pregnant with John, did I belittle you? Did I belittle you? Skinny or fat, I'm the same person you've been married to all these years. Don't try to kick my ass now that I'm down. You're not interested in getting into bed with me anymore. You made that clear the last time we were together. From what I've seen and learned, it looks like I've been replaced by Rick or someone else. I found your love nest. You could at least do me the courtesy of changing the linens and taking out the trash. I threw out the mattress and the empty wine bottles. You're right about one thing. We're both going to get old and gray. We just won't do it together. Your soon-to-be ex-husband. This should shut her up, I said to myself as I hit the send button. I made a list of all my assets. Sandy was going to get 50% of everything she knew about. What she didn't know about, I wanted to keep private. Ken told me that if he was asked by the court, he would have to say I was a partner. But if they just wanted proof of my salary, that's all he would give them. The house was mine, donated by my parents, and the cars we drove we could keep to keep things simple. I guess everything else would be thrown into a big pot and everyone would get half. That suited me just fine. What's the love nest? Sandy replied. I have no idea what you're talking about. Our bedroom is the only love nest I know of. If you're accusing me of something, at least have the courtesy to meet me face to face instead of playing these childish games. I suppose this way of communicating is as good as any other, and I replied to her. How stupid do you think I am? I went up to the cabin and found all the evidence. Too bad I was there a week before the heart attack. Did you spend Friday and Saturday at his place, or did he get a hotel room this time? I thought that should shut her up, but it wasn't more than 10 minutes before I got a response. Heck, that was the most we'd communicated in the last 4 months. Call your daughter and ask Tina who spent Wednesday through Saturday morning with her at the college after you so kindly disappeared on Monday without letting me know. FYI, I haven't been back to the cabin since you and I were last there about 4 or 5 months ago. So if that's all you've got, it's pretty pathetic. Could I be wrong? Either way, the last 2 years of our marriage have been very hard on me. John, it's Dad, was how I would start a conversation with my son. Yes, I'm doing fine, and no, I don't want to discuss your mother right now, I told him. Now it was the bluffer's turn. I know you've been cheating on Cindy, and I want it to stop before I call her and turn you into the police, you piece of shit. Dad, I don't know what you're talking about, John replied. John, I was at the cabin, and our neighbors said they saw the two of you when you went up there. You didn't even change the damn sheets, asshole. What do you think Cindy's gonna say when I call her? If she doesn't shoot your ass, her brothers are sure to pay you a visit, I said, as I continued to fish. It was just a one-time thing, Dad. You have to believe me. It's not an affair. It was just one time, and she doesn't even work for the company anymore. I heard him pleading to save his life. I'll say this once and only once. If I ever hear you fooling around or even think you're looking at another woman, I'll call Cindy in a flash. She should be the happiest and most caring wife in the world from now on, if you know what I mean. Get your head out of your ass and grow the hell up. I will, Dad. You can count on it. Just please don't call Cindy, he pleaded. Okay, son, I gotta go. Remember what I told you? I warned him before hanging up. Well, that was interesting, I said to myself as I pondered my next steps and sent one last email to Sandy. Well, I guess you weren't bothering anyone at the cabin. Turns out it was our asshole son. However, that still doesn't explain your actions with Rick and everyone else. I guess I still loved you before that night, but not anymore. I think you still love me, but you haven't been in love with me in a very long time, I'm sorry to say. And I can't live like this anymore. Life is too short. I found out in a very painful way. That's how I ended it. I was as much to blame as Sandy. We knew we were drifting apart, but we did nothing to stop it. Between her work, kids, and social calendar, there was no time for us. And I, who was trying to conquer the business world single-handedly, was no better. The only difference was that Sandy looked as good as when we first met, and I looked like someone from Slobs R Us magazine, but no more. I spent the next 3 months doing nothing but exercising and eating right. The first 35 pounds went away quickly, but then I hit the first of many plateaus. But I didn't give up. I was now committed to regaining what I had lost years ago, my waistline, and, most importantly, my life. Sandy and I texted each other every week to keep each other updated on what was going on in our lives, but we never saw each other. After 6 months, I expected to receive divorce papers, but they never came. Our letters were mostly about how we felt about each other and our breakup, about the problems we each saw in our marriage and why we weren't doing anything about them. Like I said, we were both at fault. Thanksgiving sucked. The kids split the time between the two of us, her dinner and my dessert. John announced that Cindy was pregnant and Tina said she finally got her diploma, or would have it by the end of the semester. I laughed and said I'd believe it when I saw it. And they tried to get information out of me, but I said it was none of their business. Tina pouted a little, but backed off when I told her that's enough. During the vacations, our correspondence took a new direction, but I still can't tell you how it happened. They became more intimate and emotional. One night, Sandy asked me if I remembered that first night we did it, how her roommate and parents came over to our house. I corrected her by telling her that time didn't count because we didn't have a chance to finish. It wasn't until 2 weeks later that we finally finished, and so on. We walked down memory lane for almost a month. For Christmas, I sent her a pair of emerald earrings. I know she didn't have a pair because she gave hers to Tina for her 21st birthday. I just put in a little note to replace the ones you gave up. And that's all it said. Sandy never sent me anything for Christmas, but I guess I really wasn't expecting anything. New Year's Eve was approaching and Ken approached me with a problem. Steve, my wife's sister is coming to town and Carrie wants to invite her to a New Year's Eve party at the country club. The sister doesn't want to go to the bachelor party, and Carrie refuses to leave her home alone. Could you be a buddy and be her date for New Year's Eve? Come on, Steve. I'll owe you big time. He must have begged for a week before I finally gave in. What the hell? And then I realized it was a formal night and I didn't have a tuxedo anymore. It took me 3 stores and a huge bribe to buy a tuxedo and have it custom made in less than a week. Wait until Ken sees my December expense report, I said with a laugh. John and his wife invited me over for New Year's Eve, but I told them I was going on a date. You have a date? He asked. Not a date, I'm accompanying my boss's wife's sister, I told him. You don't need to lie to me. I won't tell my mom, he replied. I'm not lying, and your mom probably already has a date on New Year's Eve, so why don't we just forget about it? I said, getting a little annoyed. It was the one thing neither of us had mentioned in the last 9 months, whether either of us were dating. I'd gone to business lunches a few times, but nothing more than that. I wasn't sure about Sandy, though. A beautiful woman like her probably had a full dance card. We were still married, but essentially only nominally. I think we should settle this matter after the first of the month, I said to myself. By 7 o'clock, I was at Ken's house. He let me into the house and I met Sue, Carrie's sister. She was about 45 and very pleasant looking. I offered to go in one car, but Ken insisted we take two cars. Look, you can go home after the dance, and I'll take these two women with me, unless you're going to try your luck with Sue, he said, nudging me in the side with his elbow, since Carrie had told him to act his age, not his IQ. The room was full, and there wasn't a single empty seat in the room. I knew most of the people at our table as they admired how good I looked. Wow, Steve, how much weight have you lost? Somewhere in the neighborhood of 80 pounds, I answered them. Hell, if I didn't know you so well, I wouldn't recognize you, one of them told me. Dinner was pretty decent, a choice of steak or chicken, and together with vegetables and rice, it was quite tolerable. I ate about half of it. There was no point in breaking my diet today. I drank one glass of wine and sipped another, reacquainting myself with people I hadn't seen in the last 9 months. After dessert, the lights dimmed and a band played. Sue said she wasn't much of a dancer, and I certainly wasn't, so after a few songs, I bowed out and started walking around the room. And then I saw her. She was very beautiful, about 180 centimeters tall, with brown hair and a body to die for. For the next half hour, I watched her while she danced a few semi-fast songs with 3 older gentlemen. Each time a slow dance began, she returned to her table and sat down. Despite the invitation, she never did a slow dance with anyone. And I slipped one of the band members a $100 bill and asked him to play 2 slow songs in a row, the first one being You Look Lovely Tonight. I didn't care what the second one was, as long as it was slow. Once the band started playing, I walked up to this angel and asked her to dance. Excuse me, I only dance slow songs with my husband, she began without looking at me. Well then, I guess there won't be a problem, I said, reaching out and taking her hand. No. She turned around and started to say something when there was a shout from her. Steve! In the flesh, now let's dance, I said, pulling Sandy to the floor. Steve, was all I let her mumble. Don't talk, just dance with me, I told Sandy, pulling her tightly against me. I didn't let her go when the second song started, and when Nights in White Satin came on, I pulled her even tighter to me. Sounds like someone missed me, Sandy whispered in my ear. She was right, I did miss her, but I wasn't about to go back to the life I had left behind. When the song ended, I didn't want to let her go, and I didn't. I think we should talk some other time, I started, still holding her hand. Why not now? Snip, don't you think your date might get jealous? I replied. What date? I came with John and Cindy, she said, pointing to them on the dance floor, and John smiled back at me. I'll be back in a second, I told her, walking back to my table. You're the one who set me up, aren't you? I asked Ken. No, John, Tina, and I set up both you and Sandy, he replied with a smile. Hell, Sue didn't even want to go. I had to bribe her to come, so be a good boy and get out of here. I'll see you next week. John and Cindy were already back at the table when I returned. I guess you two are pretty smart, aren't you? I asked, watching Cindy and John smile at Sandy and me. I had no idea what they were planning, Sandy said, her eyes begging me to believe her. Daddy, I didn't say where we were going to be, just if you want to spend New Year's Eve with us. Cindy interrupted the 3 of us. Look, you two need to talk and John and I need to leave. I can't drink, I'm stuffed to the gills and I'm waddling around the dance floor like a duck in this condition, she said, rubbing her stomach. So if you two don't mind, we're out of here. I wanted to say a million things, but Sandy started babbling nonstop. You look so good, Steve. How much weight have you lost? Where do you live? Did I lose sight of you when you moved out of rehab? Are you dating? Are you dating anyone in particular? And so on and so on and so on, and it was like she was trying to get all her questions answered in the first 5 minutes, because she was probably afraid there wouldn't be another chance. Say, let's get out of here and go somewhere we can talk, I said to Sandy, took her by the scruff of the neck and led her to my car. Where are we going? You'll see, I replied. We drove in silence for the first 5 minutes, both of us almost afraid to say something that would break the mood. In case you're wondering, I haven't dated or gone to bed with anyone, Sandy said without looking at me. And I've never gone to bed with Rick or anyone else, no matter what anyone tells you. I know, I replied, without taking my eyes off the road. What do you mean, you know? You're the one who accused me of cheating on you. I know. And if I had proof that you were sleeping with someone, we wouldn't be sitting in this car together right now, I told her. She fell silent and sank into thought. It was past midnight when I pulled up to our lake house. I left the lights on, unlocked the door and went back to the car to get Sandy. Once inside, I lit the gas fireplace, opened a bottle of our favorite wine, and poured us each a glass. "This is how it started and ended 9 months ago," I said as I handed her a glass. "No, not like that. It started much earlier. It just came to a head that night," she told me. "You have no idea how many nights I lay awake thinking about how much you must hate me for what I said and did to you. And if you ever gave me another chance, how I would make it up to you," Sandy said, letting a tear fall. I reached out and pulled her to me. After that, our wine glasses were not drunk for a long time. Our clothes were strewn across the living room floor, on the kitchen table, and everything else lay in a heap on the bedroom floor. "I guess that's what you could call the start of the new year," I told her. I went back into the kitchen and grabbed our glasses and a bottle of wine. "See, this conversation is going to take a long time," I said, leaning back on the headboard. Taking our glasses in our hands, we toasted to a new and hopefully better year. "I know we have a lot to talk about, but I just want to tell you again that I'm sorry and that—" I stopped her at this point. "You're sorry. I'm sorry. The kids are sorry. Everyone is sorry, but it doesn't change anything. We need to change. Both you and I need to change the way we feel about what's left of our marriage. I don't want to go back to what I left. I'd rather get divorced and start over," I told her. "I don't want to get divorced," Sandy said, and started to cry. "Listen to what I'm saying. I don't want a divorce either, but I'm not going back to the life I lived before all this shit happened," I explained to her. "The house has to go and you can move into the apartment I'm renting for now. We'll decide later where we want to live. I just have too many bad memories associated with this house. But it's our home. And I'm your husband. It shouldn't be a problem for you to make a choice. We'll sell the house, take whatever furniture we want, and either donate the rest or give it to the kids. I don't want the expense, maintenance, and responsibility of a big house anymore. A 2-bedroom apartment is all we really need. I want to travel and see all the things I've been putting off all these years. I've been given a second chance and I'm not going to pass it up," I told her. "But you and I have obligations and responsibilities." "To hell with all of them," I told her. "I'll work and give 100% when I'm there, but that's it. No more weekends, no more business trips, and no more damn golf outings. I want my life back. I want to have fun and experience the joy of doing something new. And if I want to make love morning, noon, and night, I don't want my wife telling me she's not in the mood. I don't want that anymore." "Steve, I don't know if I can do it all," Sandy replied. "Then you have a choice to make, but make it fast. The train is leaving the station and you'll either make it in time or you won't." Next chapter. The wind blew across my face as we biked to the third leg of the trip. I had never seen wine country and decided to take a week and visit a few vineyards, stopping overnight in each one. We left shortly after breakfast and figured that even after doing a bit of sightseeing, we would still arrive early in the morning and have more than enough time to explore. I hadn't ridden a motorcycle in a million years, and it was only a 250cc Honda. The Harley we rented had a 1,350cc displacement and weighed over 1,200 pounds. What a difference it made. But it handled like a dream, and for the first time in a long time, I felt happy and free when I felt her arms around me. We arrived, checked in, and headed for our cottage. "I'm glad I came," she said, kissing me at the door. "I'm glad you came too. I think we have plenty of time to get things laid out before the tour starts," I said, tossing our bags onto one of the beds. Taking off her jacket and then her shirt, she stood with her hands on her hips. "You have a choice. We can go on a tour, or I can give you your own tour," she said with an angry look on her face. I closed and locked the door. Her tour was much more interesting and rewarding. We showered, and as we were getting dressed for dinner, I pulled her to me and kissed her. "No regrets?" I asked. "Not a thing," Carol replied. "So let's get moving. I'm starving." "That's right, Carol. You see," Sandy missed her train. "Steve, we're not kids anymore. We just can't drop everything and start over," Sandy said that night in the cabin, trying to convince me. "Let's give it 6 months and talk about it again, okay?" The divorce only took 3 months. Although everyone thought I was crazy, I moved on with my life. The kids took her side, and Sandy decided to keep the house. We split almost everything in half, as Ken provided the court with my annual salary. Since the divorce, I have not spoken to or seen Sandy. I hope she is doing well. One Saturday morning, I met Carol at a 5K race. We both took first place in our age groups and then started running together after work. After a long run on Sunday morning, we showered together and got down to business. That was 8 months ago. She is 6 years younger than me. Her only question is, will you ever grow up? God, I hope not. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. So subscribe to my channel and watch the next video.